There's 6 people. No, that's selfie. I just had to show that there were 6 people. Someone take this video now.
Cut. Retake.
Alright. Have you ever been cage diving with sharks? No? Neither have I. But I have been swimming with dolphins in Mexico, and it absolutely changed my life. Now, my life has been an interesting series of events, but the most experiential of events and the most informative events have been traveling. Now, why is this important, you may wonder? In my life, traveling and getting to see the world's culture has been some of the most realizing and motivational times of my life as well, and I don't think I would be the same person today without the travels that I've had. In this speech, I will tell you about the 3 most experiential places I've been, the things I've done, and some of the things I've learned. Now, the first adventure I want to tell you about is Costa Rica. Costa Rica I got to go to in the 10th grade. Now, when we got to Costa Rica, we landed in a small airport, and the first thing that we got to see was the beautiful runway. We got greeted by the heat and a bunch of locals, all that had a simple saying, Pura Vida. Now, in Costa Rica, the life is a very simple life. They're all about neighborly love, having a beautiful connection with everything around them, and making sure that their community is doing the best possible that it can be. And when we went to Costa Rica, it wasn't a very touristy place at all. So there weren't very many resorts or anything like that. So we got to be in touch with a lot of the locals, and we got to see a lot of how they live their life in a completely different culture. Now, back to the saying. They say Pura Vida. They say Pura Vida as a greeting, as a goodbye, as everything. And what it means is pure life. And by that, what they're saying is, we wish you the best possible life that you can have every single day. And that showed me just a beautiful culture of connection and a way of living that is completely different than anywhere else that I've seen. Now, let's talk about a few things I got to do when I was in Costa Rica. We got to drive around the entire island because going from one end to the other only takes about 8 hours, and if they had roads, it would only take about 4 hours. Now, with that being said, the first place we got to go to is Arenal, which is a rainforest at the base of an active volcano. We got to stay in this cabin and every single morning see beautiful, beautiful colors and lights with the volcano spewing out of the top every morning at 5 a.m., slowly coming down the side of the mountain, and something that is very hard to explain in words, and there's beautiful pictures and everything like that about. While we were there, we got to go do what is called waterfall rappelling. Waterfall rappelling is when you're going down waterfalls, you're going up waterfalls, you're tied by a rope, and all you're doing is being completely with nature. In the rainforest, we got to see all sorts of different wildlife. We got to see the way that the locals live their life there in the mountains. Now, from the mountains, we went down further into a town and got to go whitewater rafting. Now, this is something that apparently the locals do for entertainment. Like I said, this isn't a very highly developed country, not a very touristy country, so they didn't have Wi-Fi everywhere, cable, etc. So, seeing what they got to do when they're bored, when they want entertainment, you get to see such a rich culture of involvement and how beautifully they all just want to live their lives and experience everything. Going through Costa Rica, I got to see mainly that their way of life, their way of living, simply put, is experience everything to the fullest and make sure that everything that you're doing is for the better. And when you are living in a culture like that and all you're doing is worrying about the person next to you, not necessarily worrying, but seeing what you can do to better your life and better the people around you, naturally, what I should do next or what is the right thing to do just kind of comes to you. With that, about 2 years later, I decided to start looking at different cultures more closely, different religions. Now, the first thing I did was go to college and converted to Judaism. Now, through that conversion of Judaism, I started exploring what it meant to live in a different culture, what it meant to live in a different religion. And with that, I got afforded the opportunity to go to Israel for 10 days. And in Israel, I got to see 2 very different spectrums of how people live. The first place we went to was Tel Aviv, which is a coastal city, and it's a very highly tourist town, business town, and basically the hub of everything social in that country. There I got to see a very rich culture of food, a rich nightlife, and a place that did not care about where you were from, who you were, what race you were, what religion you were, anything like that. The only thing that they wanted to do was have fun, and just like in Costa Rica, experience life. And if you have business, take care of your business. And that was a very beautiful lesson that I think I got to learn there. It changed the way that I started going through college. I started to have the more work hard, play hard mentality, and it has absolutely changed multiple things for me. Now, after Tel Aviv, the next place we went to was the polar opposite. It was Jerusalem. The first thing that happened when we went to Jerusalem was we all noticed that everything about where you were from, who you were, what race you were, and what religion you were the first things that mattered. Now, this is something that was polar opposite to anywhere else that I've been, including America, including Costa Rica. And there I got to see how some of these things that we're seeing in history books, the way that cultures were, the way that civilizations were run, things that we read about now are actually still being done in Jerusalem. The way that their life is a very old school way of life, and they stick to their old cultures and their old laws very strictly. After all my travels, after seeing all of that, I have come to one place in my mind where I can say definitively that what I learned the most started at a young age, at 6 months old, when I first traveled to India. Now, going to India wasn't actually my decision or anything like that. Like I said, I was 6 months old. My grandparents actually took me as a way of allowing my parents to work, pay off their debts, etc. It's something that's commonly done with a lot of first-generation Indian parents who come here and have kids, and if their parents are able to, they will take their grandchildren to India for a few years. So I was in India for about 4 to 5 years, on and off, and because of that, my first language was Telugu, which is the language of the state that I was staying in, and that made for a very interesting transition experience coming back to America and going to school here. But that's a story for another time. Let's talk about what I learned in India. In India, I got to learn everything about what is good versus bad, what is right versus wrong, what is life in general started for me there. India is a very dialectical culture, and the stories of the ways that I was being taught these different things mesmerized me as a child and still mesmerize me to this day. There are stories of young children who were thieves, and they stole butter and candy and little things like that made the town say, oh no, this little bad kid, yet they turn into be the greatest warriors and the greatest intellectual people of their time. And these are all true stories that have been written down and, of course, exaggerated to an extent. Now, in India, traveling was one thing that absolutely opened my eyes to the mesh of cultures around the world. India is a country that took on many, many different attacks as it was forming itself, and was taken over by many different kingdoms, many different rulers. And so they had a very highly blended historical and cultural society. There we got to see things such as the Taj Mahal, which is a thousands of year old structure that was built in a time of kings and rulers and conquering, all the way to seeing Google's second largest campus being put in a city there. So you get to see everything that's historical, everything that's beautiful, cultural, and rich, all the way down to something that's incredibly technological, incredibly precise, and incredibly different from what it was before. Now, seeing India, I got to see the way that the culture was there. The culture there seemed to me a culture of true intelligence and consciousness, not in a way of necessarily books or education, but more in the way of knowing how to conduct their societies. I got to go to a rainforest in the south and see a beautiful civilization that has been there for almost 6,000 years, that was built in the most conscious way possible, that makes the least ecological impact of anywhere in the world. They live amongst the rainforest, they have water, electricity, they have cable and Wi-Fi even in some places, yet they do not destroy any of the habitats there. The habitats there for the animals and all of this is actually grown. I got to see how intelligent and conscious they were way back then, in 6,000 years ago, before there was a true system of pharmaceuticals and medicines. They knew that there was a medicinal herb garden that naturally grew, and they placed their hospital there, they placed their town right next to a water source, and you get to see that consciousness still thriving through that community. Now, Gustav Flaubert once said, "Travel makes one modest. You see what a tiny place you occupy in the world." And I heard somewhere once that to travel is to live. And putting those two in conjunction, I can say, has been the absolute crux of the last few years of my life. Coming to a point where everything in my life has changed due to the reasons of traveling and due to the experiences that I've had. I strongly believe that without travel, I wouldn't be necessarily who I am. So to talk about the dolphin experience, I got to swim with dolphins in Mexico, and swimming with these creatures, I got to see the beauty of nature, the intelligence of nature, and how smart some of these animals actually are. Some of the things that these animals were able to learn within a 1-2 month period while being rehabilitated. They knew exactly when there was feeding time, they knew exactly when there was something to play with, etc., etc. Things that you wouldn't naturally assume that animals in the wild would be very conscious of. So all in all, the experiences of traveling, the cultures that I've seen, the things that I've done, and everything that has happened in my life has shaped who I am. And without travel, I don't think that the experiences in my life would be where they are now. Once again, to travel is to live, and I stand behind that strongly.